Your daily dose of sports talk is here. Highlights, interviews, and analysis. From the entertainment capital of the world, SportsWrap with Jason Page starts now.
Thank you for being with us on this Friday edition of the show. A whole lot to do over the next 60 minutes, getting you set up for the weekend. NFL Conference Championship weekend is here. Championship Sunday. Sam and I will preview those games to finish the show. Robert Littal will weigh in with his thoughts. He joins us every Friday on the show. Founder of Black Sports Online. Get some thoughts with him on some of the top and not so top stories of the week. There is news from baseball. What was once old is new again. Tell you all about that coming up a little later on, plus a big trade involving MacKenzie, Gore, the Rangers, the Washington Nationals, and some controversy surrounding where the Dodgers are finding all this money these days. We'll get to that as well. Tons to get to from the NFL on the coaching front, which we'll talk about here in just a couple of moments. And there's news from college football to get to before we wrap up the show as well. But we start things out, as we always do, with the big story. And the big story on this Friday is the coaching searches that continue and the vacancies that continue to be filled and this game of musical chairs. You know, earlier in the week we were reporting that Mike McDaniel was headed to Los Angeles to go coach the offense for the Chargers. Now there's talk he's in the mix for the Buffalo Bills job. All sorts of movement, and yesterday was no different. Feels like every day this week we've had some sort of development on the coaching front, and the one yesterday was Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers, moves into the head coaching role with the Baltimore Ravens, where he will take on this team and take on this responsibility and the stewardship of a franchise that has not been able to get over the finish line with this current group of players. And is he the guy to potentially do that? Bringing in a defensive mind when your star and your biggest star player is Lamar Jackson is kind of a curious decision, but they obviously feel like he's the guy. And again, it all comes down to who are you surrounding yourself with? You know, when we talk about, this is why the Todd Monken thing with John Harbaugh with the Giants doesn't thrill me to pieces. And it'll be interesting to see sort of who surrounds Jesse Minter when it comes to this Ravens team and who he brings in. We're talking about a guy that's, 41, 42 years old, never been a head coach at any level. And I get it. There's lots of guys who get those roles in the league who haven't been head coaches somewhere. But taking on this responsibility of a team that will be expected to contend immediately. John Harbaugh is going to a situation where he's got a couple of years of grace. Just by virtue of A, he's John Harbaugh, and B, the situation in New York has been so unstable for so long, they're just going to be happy to sort of solidify, rally around him, see what he can do. I don't know if Jesse Minter has that sort of grace period. There's going to be an expectation in Lamar Jackson's prime years, assuming he's still there next year, which I think he will be, that there's going to be an expectation of being able to win right away for Jesse Minter. So we'll see how that plays out. Then, and there's kind of a theme here because you have how the quarterbacks play into these decisions by teams. And that brings us to the Aaron Rodgers situation in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. Will he be back there next year? Will he not? Well, if the head coach is this guy, Mike McCarthy, then you think that Aaron Rodgers may come back. It seems absence has made the heart grow fonder when it comes to Aaron and his feelings towards Mike McCarthy. If the Steelers go and hire him, is Aaron Rodgers more likely to come back? How much does that matter given they think long term? Look at the last two head coaches of Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin versus just next year and how it matters for that franchise and who the quarterback is. Are they finally thinking about a strip down and a rebuild that involves Will Howard as the starting quarterback? Do they go a different direction? Do they look at free agency? Do they look at trades? All remains to be seen. But how does Mike McCarthy potentially play into that? Chris Shula is also a candidate for that job. I think it's McCarthy's job if he wants it. But given the fact that they haven't hired him yet, maybe they are waiting for Shula to be able to really interview and get involved in that process before they make a decision. Big story item number 2. We've got the conference championship games this weekend. Championship Sunday in the NFL. And here's the one thing I feel like we're guaranteed of. In a year where there's been no guarantees, in a year where it feels like week to week we've been vacillating on who the top team is, where we've vacillated on who the team to beat is, and it feels like there never was a consensus on who the team to beat was, maybe until we got to the playoffs, and you maybe felt that way about Seattle. But it feels like we've never had that team in the AFC. Which is why I think by the time we get to Super Bowl Sunday, 2 weeks from this Sunday, I don't know how excited people are going to be about this matchup, no matter what that matchup is. Whether it's Denver or New England coming out of the AFC, whether it's Seattle or Matthew Stafford and the Rams coming out of the NFC. I don't know how compelling this matchup's going to be. And for all the groaning and moaning and whining about, I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs in there. You know who wasn't tired of seeing the Chiefs in there? The NFL. Because they drove ratings. They drove people to the television. Like them or dislike them. They made you want to watch. Could somebody beat them finally? And last year the Eagles did. Now the Eagles aren't even there this year. And you're going to have 2 teams playing in the Super Bowl out of these 4 that remain. None of them were even really a thought for the Super Bowl last year. Maybe the Rams. Maybe. But I wonder how compelling that matchup is going to be for much of America. Where's the storyline? You want to give me, if it's Denver, it's the Jarrett Stidham sort of Nick Foles comparison, Jeff Hostetler comparison, this underdog story. You want to give me that? Okay, maybe. If it's the Patriots, it's the return to glory for Robert Kraft and this organization, the Patriot way, and Mike Vrabel, former, player under Bill Belichick, getting a chance to win a Super Bowl. Maybe. If it's out of the NFC and it's Matthew Stafford, it's, solidifying his Hall of Fame resume with a second Super Bowl title. If it's Seattle, maybe it's Sam Darnold. Can he finally get over the hump? Rags to riches story, the former Jets. Maybe. I'm having a hard time writing up what the story is for this Super Bowl. And the NFL's going to have 2 weeks to figure that out. But I am fascinated to see what happens on Sunday. Sam Yarnell and myself, we will pick the games coming up a little later on in the show. That's in Page versus the Prince. We do it to wrap up the program. Speaking of Sam Yarnell, he joins me next to talk more NFL. We welcome you back. Good to have you all with us on this Friday edition of the show. Robert Littal, the founder of Black Sports Online, coming up in 10 minutes. Talk about some of the top and not so top stories of the week. Sam Yarnell hangs with us. The pride of... What are you the pride of?
Good question.
We'll have to come up with that. We'll work on it over the weekend. So let's talk coaching news in the NFL as we prepare for conference championship weekend. We will go through the games in the final segment of the show because we save the best for last on this program. And that means let's talk about Jesse Minter to Baltimore. Alert came across my phone yesterday. I said, Jesse Minter to Baltimore. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, guy's never been a head coach anywhere at any level. I know this happens to, a lot of assistants, but stepping into a high-profile job with, an MVP quarterback. What did you make of the Ravens' decision to sort of follow the Mike McDonald plan in Seattle and bring in a defensive coordinator? Give me your thoughts on what the Ravens have done here, Sam.
Well, Mike McDonald, who was hired out of, let's not forget, Baltimore. But the Jesse Minter thing is fascinating from a multitude of aspects. You start with Jesse Minter himself. What a meteoric rise. A guy who 5 years ago took over as Jim Harbaugh's defensive coordinator at Michigan, followed him to the NFL, and 2 years later, a year later now, is essentially getting his own shot in the NFL as a head coach, a meteoric rise and another one of these trends where we see more franchises in the NFL going after these young head coaches, right? Everyone's trying to find their next Sean McVay. This is another example of that. Obviously, it's on the defensive side of the ball, which, you know, from the Ravens standpoint, that's the most curious thing of it all to me, because now throughout Lamar Jackson's career, he will have had a head coach who was a special teams coordinator and a head coach who was a defensive coordinator. He, the multiple-time MVP, is yet to have an offensive head coach behind his team. So that's the only really curious thing to me. But Jason, all signs point to this guy's supposedly going to be a very good head coach in the National Football League.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, it's all how you connect with players. And I think the theme of both of these coaching topics that I want to get into is how they wind up impacting the quarterbacks on the team. And I know if Nick Ferguson were here and actually answered my text, he would be one of those people that would yell, "It's not always about the quarterback." Well, it is about the quarterback in a lot of these instances. And how these decisions, you talk about what's going on in Miami with Jeff Hafley and that organization having to figure out who their quarterback's going to be in 2026. Obviously, there's not a decision to be made from Baltimore's perspective. It's more how Lamar Jackson processes this decision by the organization to go with Jesse Minter. And that's what remains to be seen, Sam.
Yeah, I guess. I think from a player perspective, Jesse Minter does have that seemingly ability to connect with his players. Like you saw that's the one thing you can take away from the transition from college to the pros and it being seamless is that he has the ability to bond with players, whether they be college or pro athletes. The thing that I have the question with, Jason, is, you know, what have we seen? What was the biggest complaint this past year about how the Ravens handled games? It was their offense in crunch moments, right? It was clutch decisions that were made, not having Derrick Henry on the field, for instance, for many times in games that they lost that ultimately led to their downfall against Pittsburgh, right? So that's the only curious thing for me is, do you really want a non-offensive mind leading that team right now?
41, 42 years old. To be interesting to see how Jesse Minter sort of meshes with that team. Mike McCarthy, there's talk of him landing in Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh guy. The idea of him landing with the Steelers, which, by the way, if he does, he will not be the next head coach for the next 20 years, given his age. So I think this is if they're doing this to keep Aaron Rodgers for one more year, then it is clearly the dumbest move in the history of football. I don't think that's why they're doing it. I think they're doing it because he's the next best head coach on the board. You know, who are you putting ahead of him?
Well, I think that they're going to hire Chris Shula. I don't think that the Mike McCarthy thing, I know it's got all this smoke, but it's also, bear in mind, Chris Shula's still got a job and can't do any of these formal interviews yet. So
it's true.
The Mike McCarthy thing, it's so anti-Steelers, right? It makes no sense from a Steelers perspective. That's my only issue with it.
Yeah.
In terms of him being the best head coach remaining on the market, I don't know, because, you know, would you consider him a better candidate than Mike McDaniel?
Yes. Oh my God. He's won a Super Bowl, for crying out loud. And the quarterback he won the Super Bowl with is still, you know, technically, I guess, with the team, although maybe he's a free agent. I don't know. I just wonder how much of that plays into what they're looking at here for next year. You know, if the Aaron Rodgers effect is real, because I don't think they know what their plan at quarterback. They're not going to have a draft pick that's going to net them, you know, one of these top flight quarterbacks. If you believe this draft has that top flight quarterback in it, it's not gonna land in their lap. So
I'll tell you what. You know what head coach has experience with exactly that situation and turned them into a perennial playoff contender? Sean McDermott.
Yeah.
That's who they should be going after. I doubt that they will, but Pennsylvania guy, Sean McDermott makes the most sense for the Steelers job. Defensive guy who the Steelers always want, is familiar with coming into a franchise that's a little bit reeling for wins, as the Bills were when he was hired there. Sean McDermott to me is, if we're considering all things, the best head coaching candidate. Again, it seems like the Steelers have made up their minds between Shula and McCarthy already, and we'll see. Jason, I cannot get behind this franchise making that move. It's like, I think Dan Orlovsky was the one who said it yesterday. It would be the worst move they've made in a long time if they hire Mike McCarthy and bring Aaron Rodgers back.
I'm surprised that Dan actually would have said that, but interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, probably wants to see the younger guy get the opportunity. We'll see how it plays out over the weekend. Who knows? By the time we come back on Monday, we might have a couple of new head coaches hired to discuss as we get into the conference championship weekend games that we'll obviously be recapping on Monday's show as well. All right, stick around. We've got plenty more to do. Sam will return later on. Robert Littal of Black Sports Online joins us next. If it's a Friday on this show, it can only mean one thing, ladies and gentlemen. I am graced with the presence of greatness. Everybody loves greatness. And when I say greatness, I mean Robert Littal. The founder of Black Sports Online hangs out with us every Friday on the program, and sometimes even on other days when we have the need. Robert Littal, I got 4 topics lined up for you. I have put them on the tee, so to speak. Okay. Let's start with the Lakers drama. First of all, they lose last night. They were down as many as 26 against the Clippers before they rallied, got to within 2, but then come up short against the Clippers, who are playing much better since starting out the season 6-21. And if that team has their full complement of players together when they get to the postseason, they are going to be that team that nobody wants to play in the early rounds, because they're going to make things miserable for whoever they play if they are healthy. That said, on the drama that is played out, and Jeannie Buss and pushing her brothers out, and regretting bringing LeBron into it, as somebody who's in the belly of the beast in Los Angeles, what have you made of this story?
Well, I will say that while the story is very in-depth, it's not surprising, especially the people here in the area. I mean, since their father has died, there's been a lot of infighting. Because there's some brothers, I mean, not step brothers, half brothers involved. And you know how that goes when, you have different parents in a corporation like this. It's a little sad to me, because I think Dr. Buss, the whole point was to make sure that his kids had this legacy of the Lakers, which is one of the most storied franchises of all time. But, the family feuds when the patriarch sometimes passes away. And you know what it made me think about? What's going to happen when Jerry Jones goes? Like, I really wonder, and we've seen it with the Broncos as well when Polian
when Pat Bowlen died, yeah.
It just doesn't seem that the kids are as equipped to handle things as the fathers were. And so it was sad, but not surprising.
Yeah, and maybe it's just because they're not as invested emotionally into it. They don't have that attachment. Although I will say, Carly Ursay, Jim Irsay's daughter, it feels like she is fully engrossed in every aspect of that organization, and is committed to trying to understand everything there is to know, crash course or not. She's trying to learn everything there is to know.
Yeah, well, think about though, her father took over from his father.
Yes.
And now we got the FBI investigating her father's death. So it's even when it does seem to pass down, and there seems to be some logic to it, there always seems to be some drama to it, as well.
I'll throw another one. Bob Kraft, his kid, is basically the heir apparent there. Stephen Jones, from Jerry Jones. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. So even the Lions, I think, it's all stayed within the family.
You made a good point about investment. It's not their money. You know what I mean? They rich,
yes.
but it wasn't their money that they invest. Jerry Jones and all these guys, they made their money, certain ways and then invested, into these franchises. So you're right. They have a lot more invested than the kids who could be like,
inheriting
deal with the day to day.
Yes. Inheriting it versus having been vested in it. It's your baby from the start, as opposed to you adopting. As opposed to you adopting.
You should treat your adopted
kids
the same as
you
your
should.
brother.
I'm not saying that. The Dan Orlovsky drama. For people that don't know, he had some critical comments of CJ Stroud on Monday after the Texans lost in big part because of the way Stroud played. Dan Orlovsky apologizing for those comments on ESPN this week. Listen and watch.
Before I do that, I want to go back to Monday morning, because on Monday morning after the Patriot-Texans game, I went on and said, Houston wins that game with 31 other quarterbacks. I want to publicly apologize to CJ Stroud. I crossed the line. I don't ever want to do that in this role. When I started 8 years ago, was making the commitment, never go on TV and say, well, they won because the quarterback played good, or they lost because the quarterback played bad. And so I've been called out on it. Accountability, full stop, shouldn't have done it. There's ways for me to say that in regards to CJ Stroud did the one thing he couldn't do, and that's why they lose the game. I don't want to take away from New England's defense as well. So full stop, that wasn't cool of me, and that was wrong of me. Different way for me to communicate that.
All right, Robert Littal. He got crushed for the way he criticized CJ Stroud, which, by the way, in part, he wasn't wrong on Monday when he said, CJ Stroud could not have played worse in that game. And I blame D'Amico Ryans just as much for what took place there, because he should have pulled him from the game. That said, what did you make of Orlovsky's decision to then turn around and do this sort of about face on what he said?
I think he's caught in between. I think he's caught in between of wanting to be a very good X and O guy, a guy that breaks down games, a guy that wants to be liked in media, and a hot taker. And I think he got taught that from Stephen A. Smith, because when he started at ESPN,
McAfee
it was
too.
all about the breakdowns. And then he went on First Take, and they're like, listen, if you want to stay on First Take, you got to say something interesting. Max Kellerman told us how it went. And I think he's conflicted. See, some guys aren't conflicted. They're like, as long as the money is coming in, I say whatever, and I never, when we've ever heard Stephen A. Smith apologize for anything that he said. I think that's why people are getting on him, is because we think he can do better. We think more highly of him. So, the fact that he doesn't say anything about Josh Allen, the fact that, he kind of he did disrespect the Patriots, defense, with it. It's not so much that, and I think the one part that he said that is very, 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 very crucial to all people that are on TV, it's not necessarily what you're trying to say, it's how you say it. He could have said it in a much more, let's put, non-controversial way, but then they wouldn't have put it on all of the social media.
Right.
Because it was everywhere. He wouldn't be on awful announcing. He wouldn't get all of the publicity if he would have just said, something, like what you just said. Man, CJ Stroud could have played a lot better if they would have had a different quarterback. You never know. They probably would have won the game.
Hey, I only got about 30 seconds left in this segment. I'm holding you over, but I got to ask you, as the Ohio State guy, does CJ Stroud deserve another contract from the Texans?
I think he deserves another year to prove he deserves another contract. Let's put, and we can't look. We're in a society where one game clouds everything. Remember, all I got to say is remember what the Texans were before him and D'Amico got there.
Listen,
I tell you, 8-36.
Okay, that's fine. But here's what I will say: for the last three, after his very first season, I came on this show and every other show and said he got by on a lot of smoke and mirrors that first year, throwing a lot of risky throws, a lot of risky plays that paid off, gunslinger mentality, and it hasn't worked in years 2 and 3. We're coming back. Robert Littal is the founder of Black Sports Online. He joins us every Friday here on SportsWrap, talk about the top stories of the week and sometimes even the not-so-top stories of the week. College football's national championship game going to the Indiana Hoosiers, first 16-0 team since 1894 when my Yale Bulldogs pulled off that accomplishment. But it wasn't necessarily the game some people were talking about on Tuesday morning. Robert Littal. Now, I got to say, look, anybody, if you're brand new to the show, this is going to be a revelation to you. I'm openly gay, okay? I had no idea who the hell a Bella Danger is for that reason, because I really wouldn't have much of a reason to be seeing her previous work prior to the time of getting to Miami. But apparently this woman was shown during the game. Here's a screen capture of a Bella Danger who appeared on camera during this game. And people got all bent out of shape about the fact that this, I guess, former porn star, is she still doing porn? I don't know. But apparently that she was shown on camera was an outrage to so many people, only because they found out she was a porn star by virtue of the fact that it was all over social media. I have since checked out her work, by the way. Now I know what she does and who she is. So I ask you, Robert Littal, one, did you know who a Bella Danger was? Be honest. Pretend your wife is not watching the show. And does it really matter that she was shown on camera for a split second?
Not initially. I will say that. Like when this first happened a few weeks ago, I wasn't aware. She's a little younger and I'm a little older. If if the ages were a little closer, I probably would have. But no, I think she's for a little bit people that are younger.
It's not Seika. If it was Seika, you'd know who it was.
It's a little bit, Jenna Jameson. It's a little younger for me. I will say this: it is a lie that people were offended that's something that was manufactured on social media. We really got to watch out for social media these days because honestly, 30 million people or whatever watched that. She was on there for 5 seconds. The majority of people that were watching that game aren't on Twitter. We have to be honest. That was a manufactured thing. Nobody was upset. Nobody was calling the FCC. Nobody kid was like, oh, who is that? And their dad was like, oh, well, let me tell you something, son. That was all overblown. I think she's playing it up for publicity, to be honest with you. I mean, how many times are you going to get your name, and I think I saw it in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, Hollywood Reporter. I think it's been good. I know she's trying to be a lawyer now or something like that.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good for her.
But here's the thing. She's not allegedly doing the work anymore, but she still has the OnlyFans. She still is a influencer. There's still ways for her, to make money off of this. So I think a little bit of the woe is me. I can't believe this. Please, ESPN, leave me alone, ESPN. No, I've watched her Instagram. She has no problem being on camera. Let's put it like that.
She owns it. She owns it, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, it's what we are in 2026. It's this crazy thing that 4 or 5 days later, more people are talking about that than the game, which is actually was pretty good.
Are you surprised, by the way, that Ohio State is picked has better odds to win the national championship next year than Indiana?
No. People want to see it's not a fluke. Even though we got maybe a 2-year sample, they just want to make sure it's not a one and done. I think, the Ohio State, the Texases, the Georgias, they get every year they get a little carte blanche because of who they are. Okay. I always think that the reigning national champion should be number one to start the season. I mean, that's just the way I think it should be. I hate preseason polls because who knows, especially with the transfer portal, they're like totally different teams, every year.
Yeah.
But I think the national champion should be, number one. But in the end, it normally ends up working. I think Ohio State goes to Indiana, and that's how you will be to determine that.
True. Jake Hoover will be the starting quarterback, at least as of now, for Indiana next season, coming over from TCU. Alberto Mendoza, Fernando Mendoza's brother, headed to Georgia Tech to go play there after entering the transfer portal because he knew he wasn't going to be the starter next season for that team. All right. The conference championship game, Sam and I will give our picks in the final segment of the show. I want to let you weigh in with who you think winds up in the Super Bowl 2 weeks from now. By the way, are you going to Radio Row in Santa Clara?
I will be there for a couple of days. I won't be there for the entire week, but I will stop by for a little bit.
Okay. I am not going. Broncos hosting the Patriots on Sunday in the first game. Broncos plus 4.5, 42.5 is the number. Go.
Broncos. Easy work. Patriots haven't played anybody all year.
Even with Jarrett Stidham, huh? You still think easy work, huh?
I think in one of these one game situations where you have a whole week, we've seen it happen. Nick Foles, Jeff Hostetler for the older
Hostetler. Wow,
big Jeff Hostetler fan. I think I will say this: Bo Nix is a good young quarterback, but I don't think their team is predicated on Bo Nix. This is not like a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, type of situation where if they go down, it's over. I think they're more of a well-rounded team, and they're playing at home, and the fact that they're underdogs, I think, is going to piss them off.
All right. Rams and Seahawks in Seattle. No Zach Charbonnet for the Seahawks in this game. It is Seahawks -2.5. 46.5 is the total. What do you like?
I like the Seahawks. They have one of the better defenses that I feel like nobody talks about the Seahawks. They just kind of roll through the season, but healthy mostly, not Charbonnet, but they still have the other running back. I just think they're dead. I think Samuel Darnold is destiny. I think he's gonna go.
I'll tell you right now, they better win by a lot, because if it's close, I don't have any faith in Sam Darnold in a big spot against that Rams team. Robert Littal, the founder of Black Sports Online, hangs out with us every Friday here on SportsWrap. I appreciate you, my friend. Have a great weekend.
All right, here. See you next week.
Minutes from now, we'll wrap things up with Page versus the Prince, the AFC and NFC championship games. Sam and I will have our prognostications for that. So how many Fuddruckers are left, Sam, since you wanted to go look it up? We were talking about something Sam and I were talking about during the break. He asked me if I had ever had Fuddruckers. I said, no, I didn't even know if there was one here in Las Vegas, but apparently there is.
Well, Jason, in the continental U.S., I take that back. In the U.S. and Mexico, there are between 44 and 54. You don't know,
that's
because
not a lot
there,
left.
I guess,
wow.
Yeah, there really aren't. And that's as of late 2025. What I thought was interesting is the restaurant Perkins. Have you ever been to the restaurant Perkins, known for the large flag out in front?
Yes.
They bought Fuddruckers. So Perkins owns Fuddruckers.
There you go. Fair enough. Like IHOP owns Applebee's. There you go. Did you know that? Yes. IHOP and Applebee's are the same company. Yep. True story. Love me some IHOP. That big steak omelet.
Way.
I swear it is. IHOP and Applebee's are the same company. I swear, you learn something new every day. Let's talk some baseball here, because it feels like there's been a lot of baseball news throughout the week, various stories. June Lee, credit to him and others who are apparently diving into the investigative sports journalism world to try and figure out where the Dodgers are getting all this money. And apparently they stumbled upon this loophole that took place when the Dodgers were going through bankruptcy, that when they were coming out of bankruptcy, this loophole basically said, you basically get to keep all your TV money. And in the case of the Dodgers, you don't have to share it. You get all this money. It's like $69 or $70 million. I don't know. Anyway, people are crying foul. They're saying, how are we supposed to compete when the Dodgers have this special deal? They're not in bankruptcy anymore. They clearly have lots of money. Why are they able to keep their TV money? And again, just those signs pointing towards baseball Armageddon a year from now, Sam.
Yeah, this is, Jason, so to take it a little bit out of layman's terms, the Dodgers' lack of rev share is because, like you mentioned, the McCourts going bankrupt, which everybody remembers from the early 2000s, or I guess it was the late 2000s, early 2010s, whenever. This has been something that for the last couple of years, I think ever since the Shohei Ohtani deal, honestly, there were a lot of people who were kind of on the online underworkings of baseball that were yelling about this and saying, one day you'll all understand the Dodgers are making more money than everybody and they can pay all this money out the wazoo for the luxury tax because they're making it hand over fist over every other team, let alone all the small markets. Well, now the great journalists at, I don't know what outlet June Lee is associated with these days.
Basically his own thing now. He's doing
formerly
his own
of ESPN,
yes.
has done great work for a very long time. But it's surfaced to kind of the mainstream. This story that people have talked about in front offices and kind of as something that's, just a little figment of nothing that can be touched has now been brought to light. And I think that there's, kind of an understanding that we're going to have to rework this deal that runs through the mid to late 2030s, I believe.
Yes.
There's like another,
it's like 2039.
there's another 10 years.
Yes.
10 years left on this deal that's going to make the Dodgers $60+ million a year.
Yep. Great deal for them. Bad deal for the rest of baseball. What did you make? I know you're a Nationals fan. MacKenzie Gore on his way to Texas to go play for the Rangers, the team dealing him away for 5 prospects. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know anything about these 5 prospects. Maybe you do. But Gore on the move to Texas to go play for the Rangers.
I tell you what, Jason, the price of pitchers right now is through the roof. I cannot believe that MacKenzie Gore just landed the Washington Nationals 5 prospects. That on the heels of Freddie Peralta in a walk year landing the Brewers 2 great prospects from the Mets. The price of pitchers is through the roof right now. Hope your team isn't in the market for a pitcher, unless you're Jason Page, in the case of which that's all your team needs right now. But I'll say this. I talked to one of my friends who's a scout for one of the teams in Major League Baseball after the trade. There are 3 players in this trade who seem like they could actually be worth something. The other 2 are just kind of a toss-in. But Nationals fans, rejoice. This is the Taboni era, and this is what they are here to do. They are in the midst of this rebuild, and they're rebuilding what feels like a juggernaut, Jason.
Major League Baseball is always crying about trying to get younger people interested in the game. What better way to do that than inviting Bob Costas to be your voice for the pregame show on NBC's Sunday Night Baseball? Look, let me just say something real quick on this. I am indifferent about this. I'm not watching Sunday Night Baseball to watch Bob Costas, so I don't care one way or another. It doesn't impact my life, because I see some people are like, I'm not going to watch because Bob Costas is on, and maybe his political stance or this and that, and I'm sitting there going, if you're not watching Sunday Night Baseball because of Bob Costas, just admit it. You're not watching. It has nothing to do with Bob Costas. You're just not watching because you don't like baseball. So it's a curious move. They're leaning into the nostalgia. They did it with the NBA on NBC stuff and Michael Jordan, and how's that worked out, by the way. I'm just indifferent about it. I don't care.
Yeah, I
don't think anybody they would have hired would have gotten me excited.
Maybe it's because of my age, but there is a certain sense of like, I don't know, gosh, this may come across as an insult. I promise you it's not. I really do. There's a certain sense of like history that comes with listening to Bob Costas call a baseball game.
But he's not calling it. He's not calling it. He's just talking about it in the pregame.
But it's like watching a new movie in black and white. That's what it's like doing.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't care. I just don't care. I don't have enough cares to give. We'll wrap it up next. Just about time to close things out on this Friday edition of the show. But before we do, a couple of reminders. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. As good as we look, we sound even better. Check out the podcast, audio podcast only version of the show on any of those platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. 45 minutes there for you early each and every afternoon. Make sure to go and check that out. In addition to that, we have the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. This is the place to find all things Sports Wrap with Jason Page, including this very TV show. Commercial free. We take the commercials out Monday through Friday, throw it up on YouTube. It's there for you early every afternoon, the Monday through Friday version of Sports Wrap. Go and check that out. Also, Sports Wrap Shorts. These are 1 to 3 minute long videos, usually closer to a minute though, on the top stories. When news breaks, if we're not here to get it into this show, we get it into Sports Wrap Shorts on our YouTube channel. Go and subscribe. Sports Wrap Shorts also available on our TikTok, SportsWrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram by the same name, SportsWrap Jason Page. Don't forget also, we have the weekend version of SportsWrap, the 30-minute wrap-up show, the best of everything we got into from throughout the week. That's available either on the show, on the affiliate you're watching us on now, or one of the other stations in your market. Sometimes a sister station will carry it as well. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, on this Friday edition of the show, there's only one thing left to do, Sam Yarnell.
It's Friday, and that means it's time for the weekly face-off for sports betting bragging rights. It's Paige versus the Prince on the Sports Wrap.
I even pushed the right button today.
Now, what if we picked the games the same? There's no verses in that.
No, I know. And we might be on the same page here. Pun not intended. So we got 2 games to get into. Patriots-Broncos is the first game, Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern. Can I just opt for the stadium implodes before anybody's in it and they can't play the game? And neither of these teams makes the Super Bowl? Because, quite frankly, I don't want to see either of these teams in the Super Bowl. Can we do that? 4.5 to the Denver Broncos. Oh, it's dropped a point. That was 5.5, wasn't it? That number was 5.5 earlier in the week. It absolutely was.
4.5. It opened 4.5. It bounced up to 5.5 for a few hours one day and was immediately bet back down to 4.5.
Because it was definitely one day when we talked about it this week, it was 5.5. So now it's 4.5. Denver plus 198 on the money line if you're looking for any value, I guess. Or I could just kick you in the nuts and you could hand me your money. 42.5 the total, Sam Yarnell. What you got?
I like the Broncos. This is one that...
Wow.
I tell you, I liked the Broncos a lot with Bo Nix. I like them even more with Jared Stidham.
What?
People are very quick to... And listen, I'm not saying that Jared Stidham is this world-beating quarterback who's just going to go and... This is a tough environment. As you just saw last week, the Bills were having problems the entire game calling in plays. This is the toughest environment Drake May will have ever played in his entire life, and we've already been talking about him having turnover problems in the postseason at home. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Broncos. I'm going to go with the home dog, the Jason Page special, as I like to call it. Give me the Broncos. If you make me bet the total, I'd lean under, but that's just because I really like the Patriots team total under in this game. I think it's a bounce back spot for the Denver defense, and like I said, like we've seen, Drake May is prone to postseason turnovers, so I like the Broncos in this game. I like the under. Yeah, we'll see if we can get it done.
I'm actually with you. I'm not crazy about either. I'm not crazy about either team, but if you force me to choose one, I will take Denver plus the 4.5 in the game, and I agree with you on the under. I hate to be so boring as to not disagree with you, but I mean, right is right. I mean, it's kind of where I feel. Rams and Seahawks. Seattle minus 2.5. Was that the line all week on that? I thought that might have moved. I don't know.
It hasn't moved an inch.
All right, 46.5 is your total between these two teams. I expect that to be the banger. Where are you going?
I lean. This is the scary one, Jason. This is the one that, because the money split basically right down the middle. It feels like the public is slightly, but I don't know. I don't know. This is one of the ones where what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the money. This is one of those games where you just got to follow the money. I'm going to trust the people who are smarter than me, and I'm going to ride with them. As I can track the money as it'll go, I'll probably bet that side. I'm leaning Seahawks right now, but I would not be surprised if the Rams came back and upset them.
77% of the money on the spread is on Seattle. 72% of the bets right now is on Seattle, according to FanDuel. I'm going with the Rams because before the season started, I took the Rams to win the Super Bowl, and I'm riding or dying with them. Give me the Rams to win this game and go to the Super Bowl and take on the Denver Broncos. The college football playoff is going to stay at 12 teams. That news breaking while we were putting the show together today. And that wraps it up for us. Thanks to Robert Littal. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Got a quick thought in the last 10 seconds?
Disaster for the CFP.
I agree. Needed to get to 16. Gonna be a lot of unhappy teams again next year. We'll see you over the weekend for Sports Wrap Weekends. I'm Jason Page. Or we'll see you back here on Monday. Bye.